And we are live. Welcome to Rabbi Rafi Mollot YouTube channel. Everybody's Rebbe. Tonight we are doing a impromptu, off the cuff, informal conversation. We are patting ourselves on the back for finishing the book of Yonah, our biblical Hebrew series. It's now available on my channel. You can use the playlist tab to find that. And we would like to ask those viewers who are interested in contributing their opinions what we should study next. It's been a couple of weeks. The jury is still out. I've heard this suggestion. I've heard that suggestion. I haven't heard anything really resounding. So I'm still open to suggestions if people want to contribute theirs. You can hop on the live studio. There's a link pinned in the YouTube live chat. We have Cliff and Tim in the studio with us now. And if you don't want to talk about that, you could come in and talk about anything you want. So everybody's welcome. This week's going to be just open chat. We have B'nai Noach Hearts for Hashem. Shalom, Rabbi. I'm excited to see what's coming next. Thank you. I'm excited also to be able to get started on the next endeavor. Sandy is in the live stream, the live chat comments. Shalom, Rabbi Mollot. Shalom, Sandy. Okay. Like I said, Tim is here. Cliff is here. Some of the suggestions, I don't know if I remember all of them. I might have to look at the emails. Some of the suggestions were the book of Job was one of the suggestions. I'll respond to that right now. I would love to teach the book of Job. The issue teaching the book of Job is that it's a very big book. It's like super long. And given our rate of covering ground, it would take us a very long time to do. I mean, likely, I feel like it would take us years at the pace we go. Now, I don't know that I would go as slowly through the book of Job, like, because the last couple of series, like the Song of Songs, was a deep analysis of the imagery, and every verse had just so much metaphor to unpack. And the biblical Hebrew series was very intentionally a text-based study where we go really word by word. Now, Job is a very difficult book. It's probably the most difficult book of the Tanakh. I don't even want to say probably. I want to say like definitely the most difficult book of Tanakh. So there's a little joke about the book of Job, which I may have told once before, and I'll tell it again. I don't know that everyone's going to get the joke. You may need to like be Jewish to get this joke, but there are three books that share the same cantillation system. So those who don't know, the Torah and the books of the prophets and the books of the writings, they have a cantillation. That means there's a musical song, if you will, tune that accompanies the reading of the book. It's read in a tune. And the tune for the books of the Torah is different from the tune of the books of the prophets. And the tune of the books of the writings are unique as well. Some of them have one tune, some of them have a different tune. The book of Esther has a unique tune. The book of Lamentations has a unique tune. The book of Ruth, Song of Songs, and Ecclesiastes all share one tune. So they are, let's see, Ecclesiastes, Ruth, and Esther. Okay, so not Esther, sorry, Lamentations share a tune. Now, there are three books that also have the same cantillation marks, and they are the books of Psalms, Proverbs, and Job. Okay, now the cantillation system for these three books is so complex that, to my knowledge, and I'm not saying on my own authority, I heard Rabbi Breidowitz say this, Ashkenazi Jews do not have a tradition for how to read them. Like we could read the Hebrew, but we don't know the cantillation. We don't know how to sing it. We don't know the tune. The tune has been forgotten. This information was not transmitted to us. Now, I mentioned this when I was in Seattle this year, and I was sitting at the table of Dr. Levy and anyone who needs a good dermatologist. So you go to Dr. Eli Levy in Seattle. Okay, got that. So I was at his Shabbat table, and he had a number of sagacious and scholarly people around the table. And I mentioned this factoid that we don't know how to cantillate those books. And one of the scholarly Sephardic Jews at the table, Dr. Levy's a Sephardic Jew, Moroccan Jew. One of the scholarly Sephardic Jews at the table said, we know how the Sephardic Jews maintain their tradition of how to read these books. And he even told me a website where to hear it. And I forgot what it is already, but maybe I'll find out. But anyway, someone once said this to me. What is the connection between these three books, Psalms, Proverbs, and Job, that they all share the same cantillation? So he drew this line of progression through them. He said the Psalms, they're short chapters. Each chapter is independent and is unconnected to the next. You have a psalm about this, and a psalm about that, and a psalm about this, and a psalm about that. When you get to the book of Proverbs, you'll see each verse is kind of its own proverb. It's its own pithy saying, and it's independent of the next. So just as the paragraphs of the Psalms, one psalm is unique and independent of the next, each proverb in the book of Proverbs is independent of the next one, unrelated to the next one. He said, and as for the book of Job, every single word in the book of Job seems unrelated to the one that comes after. So that was a long way to go to try to make sense of a Jewish joke punchline. But the idea is that the book of Job is so difficult to understand, so complex, that from one word to the next in the text, you could be totally thematically lost of like, what just happened over here? I can't even read one word to the next in the book of Job. I finally got this word, and then I figured out what the next word means, and I don't know what one has to do with the other anymore. It's that hard. It's literally that hard. So many have constructed commentaries over the ages to try and make sense of this text. And I've studied some of those commentaries, and I find it to be still, with all that, one of the most difficult texts. Sandy is here. Welcome, Sandy. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Anyway, so therefore, I don't think it's an unteachable book. I think it is teachable, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult, and I can't guarantee the pace because just the interpretation of the words is work before you even get. Once I translated all the words, how do I string them together in a way that makes sense? And once I've done that, how do I connect one verse to the next? Because the book of Job essentially is a story, and it is a conversation between Job and his so-called friends. And there's a tremendous amount of philosophy in the book, and it really takes time to understand. So it may be too ambitious for this forum. That said, Sandy and I share a friend. His name is Jacob Fadarecci, and he has a channel called Fadarecci, Faturechi. And I always like to shout him out because he's also currently hosting my ability to stream through StreamYard. He's letting me hijack his account. So I really enjoy my friendship with Jacob, and I appreciate all the gifts he's given me. So Jacob, upon my suggestion, I think has started on his channel a study of the book of Job using the commentary of Malbim, a relatively contemporary commentary from the 19th century, which I recommended to him because I think it's the most thorough, clear extensive, deep, and profound of the commentaries that I've looked at on the book of Job. And so he may be already doing that series. And number one, I don't want to steal his fire, but number one is I already said it might be too ambitious for this channel. Number two, I don't want to steal Jacob's fire. Number three, I want to suggest and recommend that people go to Jacob's channel and join his study of the book of Job with the commentary of Malbim, which I suggested he do, and he took me up on it. So that's what I have to say about the book of Job. Okay. What else did people suggest? Some people suggested the book of Psalms. That would be another beautiful thing to study. Also, 150 chapters, pretty ambitious. Even if we could do one chapter a week, that would, and we had almost no breaks. That would be about 3 years. So I think that also might be a little too ambitious. I'm trying to remember what else. It was Cliff, as a matter of fact, if you don't mind me sharing. Cliff was interested
Not at all.
in hearing maybe a series that was more directly related to the B'nai Noachides, and study more related to that topic. And that's a possibility. For those who don't already know, I have a series that's members only on my channel, which is the Noachide laws. I had to cut the series short for lack of time. I started it over the summer when my days were more open. When the school year started, I had to cut back. I thought I would have found more time to get back into it. I know it's really been on hold. I'd like to get back to it. I'm not sure that I want to dedicate the Sunday night class to it. I feel like the Noachide series should be its own dedicated thing. And Sunday nights should be dedicated to something else. The question is, what else? So,
Rabbi?
Go ahead.
Hi, it's Cliff. Just wanted to clarify. My point in talking about the Noachides was kind of twofold. One was that I think Noachides are marvelous, and I want to defer to them. But what that the context of my statement was really not so much that we would study Noachide subjects, but that we would do something that Noachides might find interesting. And the thing that I suggested was to take issues or questions in Judaism, because, and forgive me, I may be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I must be right, is it would illuminate and provide depth as far as the religion is concerned, to take a look at some of the questions, and I gave some examples, some of the questions that we all face as human beings, and how we can bring various sources to bear to describe how Judaism approaches those issues and questions. It wasn't Noachide subjects per se, but something that I felt maybe Noachides would find very fascinating, because it brings together, the discipline of citing sources, of weighing them, of giving context and perspective around them. Just because both for me as a Jew and for Noachides, it enhances the experience of being Jewish, to be able to appreciate the depth with which our sages and our traditions, treat these questions and issues. And the nice thing about it would only be, and I'm not making a strong case for it, but the nice thing would be that it can go as long as you want. It can be issue based. So every time we would meet, there would be one question, and it would be a weighty and a meaty question, but there would be one question, and it would be dealt with from numerous different perspectives. And, there might be 3 or 4 classes, or 5 or 6 or 10 or 11. It really doesn't matter how many. It just matters that people would feel that it's something that they might enjoy continuing or not, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So there is, if I'll riff a little bit on what you're saying. There's this, maybe this is what you're referring to. What some people like to call history of halacha. History of halacha being Jewish law, is that if you take a topic in Jewish law and you want to know, like, how do we know what the law is and why it is like that? So a very fascinating study is to trace from the text of the Torah through the oral tradition, the early sources in the oral tradition, the Mishnah, and then the Talmud, and then to the later the later authorities and the codes, how this law was interpreted over the ages and trickled down till it reaches the contemporary time and its applications today. Now, the sages of our day tackled how to apply this ancient body of wisdom to the contemporary issue and come out with various different approaches. That could be a very exhilarating study, especially if it would be on a topic that's relevant to both Jews and Noachides, and that's a possibility. Of course, it also takes a tremendous amount of preparation to prepare all the relevant sources. You know, one of the advantages, I guess you could say, of the way I have been teaching is I choose a primary text and I just see it through, and it's sort of it keeps the study somewhat simple and contained, and also limits the burden on me of having to prepare over much. Now, I go overboard anyway. Everybody knows that. You know, with the Jonah series, I kind of calmed it down a little bit. But like with the Shir Hashirim, like I go all over the place. I bring all kinds of related sources. I go on gigantic tangents. I have notes that are pages long. And even when we did the Tefillah series, the prayer series, I think I used as a primary text Rav Schwab on prayer. But when I had the time, you know, if I had off from school, so then I would go to town. I would start breaking open books of Tanakh and commentaries and showing how the verses were connected to the text of the prayers, and that was more fun for me. That's always more fun. I just don't know how much I could sustain it on a regular basis to do a tremendous amount of prep. So I hear you. I like the idea. Still, I'm gonna keep it a consideration for now.
Makes sense.
We have B'nai Noach Hartzvar Hashem. Pirkei Avos study would be awesome. Now, here's another very relevant suggestion. Pirkei Avos, the so-called chapters of the fathers, ethics of the fathers, is a section of the oral tradition. It's part of what's called the Mishnah, that rather than deal with legal topics, deals with more ethical topics. That's why it's called ethics of the fathers, more character traits and behaviors and right thinking and philosophy. And that is a relatively short text. It's, I think, 6 chapters. And there are commentaries that are kind of readily available on the page. And the truth is that if I would choose that, I would opt for the commentary of Rabbeinu Yonah, and that would be actually quite ironic because we just did the book of Yonah. So one of the great commentators on Pirkei Avos, who perhaps has the most famous and classic and studied commentary, is Rabbeinu Yonah. That Rabbeinu means our rabbi, our master. Jonah of Gurundi. Rabbeinu Yonah of Gurundi, sometimes called Jonah of Gerona. So that could, and we know that ethical behavior, morality, is a topic that's very relevant for B'nai Noach. So not only is it a classic and important and foundational and somewhat essential study for Jewish people, it's very relevant for B'nai Noach because it doesn't deal with the law, which varies between Jews and B'nai Noach. It deals with upright character, which is really very much at the essence of what the Noahide Creed is about. Now, I'm gonna say another comment about how essential Pirkei Avos is. There was a great sage in the 20th century. His name was Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. In Hebrew, Wolbe, in English, it's Wolbe, sometimes pronounced Wolbe. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. Some of you may be familiar with his grandchildren who actually live here in Houston. They're my neighbors. rabbis Ariel Wolbe and Yaakov Wolbe, who have podcasts that they do. A lot of people I know they have popular podcasts that people listen to. So if you know the Wolbe brothers and their podcasts, they're my neighbors. They are grandchildren of the great Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. He was one of the great Torah leaders of this past generation, and I remember when he passed away. Very great man, and some of my own teachers were his students. Now, he wrote a foundational book called Ale Shore. Okay, whatever, not going to talk so much about it, but essentially the topic of Ale Shore, it's a book that's aimed at the yeshiva student, and it's to give guidance to a yeshiva student how to best direct himself in his studies to develop himself as best as he can, most optimally that he can. And in the early chapters there, he says that every Jew has to make sure that early on he acquires 4 foundational works within the Jewish traditional literature that are like pillars for everything else. And I know you'll say, but it's anachronistic because these books are not all so super old. But he says for the contemporary, God-fearing, Torah-observant Jew, these works have become fundamental for a Jew of our times. And one of them is learning, he says, the 5 books of Moses with the commentaries of Rashi and Ramban. Ramban is Nachmanides. So he counts that as one. That's one pillar. I've mentioned this before in the Shir HaShirim series, but it's worth saying over again. The 5 books of Moses with the commentaries of Rashi and Ramban, that's pillar number 1. I may not be going in order, but that's one of the 4. The next one, I'm not saying it's in order, is Pirkei Avos with the commentary of Rabbeinu Yonah. This is absolutely essential for every Jew. Third is the Musar work. Musar is, again, Jewish ethical books. This is not as old as, let's say, the Mishnah. It's these books are written from the Middle Ages on by authors who are trying to distill from the Jewish tradition lessons in building character aimed at specific parts of a person's personality. So you'll have different books by different authors with a different focus. He says the most essential one to study is called Mesilat Yesharim. It's translated in English as The Path of the Just by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, which is probably at this point the most classic work of Musar, Jewish ethics. And finally, he says that one must study the contemporary, I'll put in quotation marks, this is composed at the beginning of the 20th century, the more relatively contemporary code of halacha, or really it's a commentary on a code of halacha. It's called Mishnah Brura. Now, this certainly wouldn't apply to Noachites. All the other 3 can apply to Noachites, because the 5 books of Moses with basic commentaries they should study, or I should say they may study. They're not obligated to study, but generally speaking, they want to study something. So if you want to study, that's a great place to start. And there's so many essential lessons there that if you want to be a serious student of the Torah and someone who pursues the Torah way of life, no matter who you are, that is an essential place to start. Again, Pirkei Avos, for reasons we said, Mesilat Yesharim, the path of the just, ethics, of course. Here, as far as Jewish law, contemporary Jewish law, he puts forward one should study the commentary to the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, which essentially requires you to study the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, with the commentary that's called Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura was written by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan in the early 20th century, passed away 1933, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong about that. And so he lived the latter part of the 19th century and early 20th century. This was his magnum opus. He's most famously known by his nickname, the Chafetz Chaim. If you've heard of the Chafetz Chaim, this is him. He wrote a book on the laws of forbidden speech. He wrote actually 2 books on the topic. One is called Chavetz Chaim, the one who desires life, based on a verse in Psalms chapter 34. And he wrote a book called Shmirat Halashon, guarding the tongue. Both books are available in English, highly recommended. Even Noachites, who may not be specifically commanded in those laws, are nevertheless encouraged to study and follow those laws because they should refine their character, their behavior, and certainly the way they speak. Those are praiseworthy character traits to build. But as far as Mishnah Brura, which is also available in English, it's a commentary on the section of the Code of Jewish Law, the section of Shulchan Aruch known as Orach Chaim. It's the first section, which deals with essentially time-related commandments, such as holidays, the Sabbath, and prayer. Essentially, that's the topic of that volume. And so that volume of Shulchan Aruch should be studied with the commentary of the Mishnah Brura. So those are his 4 foundations: the 5 books of Moses with Rashi and Ramban, Pirkei Avos with the commentary of Rabbeinu Yonah, Mesilas Yesharim by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and Shulchan Aruch with the commentary of Mishnah Brura. Okay, so therefore, I think Pirkei Avos is a great suggestion. Now, Janice Brandon commented, I would really like that. Now, because I don't know at which point you contributed this comment, I'm not sure what you're responding to. Are you responding to B'nai Noach Hearts for Hashem comment that Pirkei Avos study would be awesome, and you're saying I would really like that? Or were you responding to something that I said, and I don't remember anymore what I said? So let me know. Yehudi Yisrael says, I'm a fan of studying the Tanakh with the Art Scroll commentaries. Okay, if you're a fan of studying the Tanakh with the Art Scroll commentaries, I suggest you do so. Buy the Tanakh with the Art Scroll commentaries and study it. Now, you don't need me for that. I don't study Tanakh with Art Scroll commentaries. I study Tanakh with the classic commentaries. I look into the classic commentaries in the original language, and I read them and I study them that way. But on that note, I'll comment that what I have enjoyed doing is that we studied through the book of Song of Songs, a rather obscure text that I think we elucidated in an incredible way. Again, just because of the beauty of the commentaries that we used, I think we opened up that book to be understood by as broad an audience as will watch my series, as is available. I think the book of Jonah, going through the book of Jonah on a plain, simple understanding level, but while also teaching how to read and understand the language, I think was a very enjoyable and valuable study. I personally really enjoy the idea. I like the idea of studying another book of Tanakh. I really like that idea. I think it's underrated. I think not enough people are doing it. And I think there's an audience, especially probably among B'nai Noach, who don't have access to the classic Jewish understandings of the books of Tanakh. They have just an English translation. I don't know if they're still using their Christian translations, but even if they bought an Art Scroll Tanakh, the Art Scroll Tanakh Stone Edition doesn't have much in the way of commentary. You could buy the individual volumes. It's a lot to go through. People want to do it that way, fine. I think there's a lot of value of teaching those texts in a live manner with an interactive class and being able to offer comments and answer questions on it. On that note, someone said Job. I said too much. Someone said Psalms. I said too much. So what would I suggest? So Jonah is part of what's called the 12 prophets. I don't know how it's arranged in a Christian Bible, and I don't know that I really care. But in the Tanakh, there is a section of the Tanakh called Tirei Asar. Tirei Asar means 12. There's two, and they're known as the 12, so to speak, minor prophets. Now, there's nothing minor about the prophets. It means that they're small books. There are 12 short prophetic books that are kind of smushed into one section called Tirei Asar, the 12 minor prophets. Jonah is one of them, so we did 1 out of 12. The rest of them are, again, relatively short. Obadiah, I don't know how you say it in English, has one chapter. The book of Haggai, again, I don't know how to say it in English, 2 chapters. Nachum, Habakkuk, Amos, Zephaniah, I think Zephaniah, Amos, however you say it. These books have like 3 chapters. What else? The book of, what is it? Micah has what, like 8 chapters? Hosea is like the biggest one. It has 14 chapters. I think Joel, the book of Joel, it's also like 3 chapters. Malachi, 3 chapters. These are really small books. We could bang these out. We should be like, bam, done, 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 done. We could just rip through many books of Tanakh with their timeless messaging. So that's something that's very tempting for me. Very tempting for me. So that's something I think about. Let me see. We have some comments here. Golden Gun. I miss your Parsha Shiurim on Tanakh Talk channel. Some of them are extremely good. Thank you. I appreciate that. I also miss it. And if I had the time to do everything, I would. I feel like Parsha classes is territory that's very well tread. There are so many Parsha classes every week all over the internet. I could give one, but I feel like I'm just a voice in the choir. You could get Parsha from so many other sources. I want to do something that's the path less tread. So that's my feeling about that. Dr. D2U agrees with Golden Gun. Okay. It's very underrated. Most Yeshiva Bachrim don't know the book of Zechariah, Micah, Hosea, etc. Zechariah is 12 chapters, so that's one of the longer ones, right? That's correct. Most Yeshiva Bachrim don't know a lot of things in Tanakh. So that, again, I think Tanakh is underrated by Jews, ironically. It's something that I love and I'd love to teach, and I think Bnei Noach would be very interested and benefit from it as well. So that's why I feel like something that would be valuable to both Jews and Bnei Noach, and be an area that Bnei Noach are permitted to study, would be something that would be worthwhile for me to do on this channel. Liz says Habakkuk, that's what I voted for. Oh, very interesting. In fact, Liz did send me an email about Habakkuk, so this would go along with what I had said before about doing the 12 minor prophets. We would cover that as well. Amos has 9, I believe. You could be right. It's been a while, so I remember a lot of them have 3. I don't remember precisely how many each of them have, so I'll take your word for it. If you say it's 9, I believe you. Zechariah has 14 chapters. Or did I say 12? You're right. It does have 14 chapters. Now that you said that, I remember it. See, it's been a while. Studying the minor prophets sounds interesting. Okay, we're getting some more buy-in over here. Good point. Parsha Shiurim is much more available and larger volume than the rest of Tanakh. You are right. Oh, thank you. I like being told that I'm right. Golden Gun says Nach. The rest of Nach, right? Because Tanakh, the tough, is Torah. Torah is very well tread. It's the Nach part, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and the Ketuvim, the writings that are less tread. So we've heard some thoughts. Anyone else want to share any thoughts on this topic? Okay, so I need to take notes. I need to take notes over here. Let me see. Let me get a little notepad. So our suggestions were Pirkei Avos, possibly, or maybe 12 prophets. We already did one of them, so 11 to go. I know I'm kind of dismissing Job and Psalms. Again, Job, go to Jacob's channel, and Psalms, I think it's too ambitious for this venue. Looks like our top and the Cliff suggestion was topics. So if we do topics, so then what I would really ask is, what topics would people want to, if we choose topics? So then I'd have to ask at that point, what topics do people want to cover? And then I'd have to start collecting the topics and start preparing ahead of time. So, yeah. So, Cliff, was it specifically topics in law that you had suggestion, or not specifically?
Actually, I was just looking them up. I came up with a couple of of suggestions, and I put them in my email, and now I'm looking for it.
Yeah,
Oh, here it
I don't
is.
remember specifically what
Oh
suggestions.
yeah,
you
I
made.
got it here.
Have
What
to-
I said was, I wonder if there would be a way to identify a series of trenchant spiritual philosophical questions, concepts, and the Jewish perspective regarding these questions and concepts. Each
Uh-huh.
week, a single question concept would be addressed, bringing sources, the perspective of sages, etc. For instance, perhaps one topic might relate to the Golden Rule. What exactly is it? Who said it? Why is it considered so central to our religion? How does it play out in practice? How do the sages interpret it? Another question might relate to Lashon Hara with similar treatment. And to your point, Rabbi, what a great opportunity to introduce or reintroduce the perspectives of the Chafetz Chaim, who I think actually died in 1930, to everyone, and to perhaps also invite someone like Rene Levy to attend the shiur to talk about why this subject has such importance. The basic idea would be to continue your process of illustrating the wealth of our tradition and making the sources and their contributions accessible to people, and so on, whether we're Jewish or B'nai Noach. The unique, multifaceted way you approach such subjects is bound to fascinate. So yeah, I mean, I remember reading something by the Chafetz Chaim on Lashon Hara that just absolutely blew my mind. He takes one instance, and I know you're probably more than familiar with this. He takes one instance of Lashon Hara, of evil speech, and he spins it out into all of the sins that are incurred by doing that one small thing. And it shows like that you're breaking all these Torah commandments by doing this one small thing, but he does it in such an amazing way that it really is mind-blowing and something that I never forgot. So maybe other people would probably have a similar experience, but that was what I said in my email.
So that's yeah. So I feel like as a topic, it's so expansive. It could be its own series,
Absolutely,
laws
yeah.
of Lashon Hara. And if people want to do that, we could go through it again. I like to stick to a text. It's comfortable for me. It's like
Absolutely, yeah.
we're reading the text, but I want to be able to offer my experience in how to read and understand a classic Hebrew text, which is I think what I can bring to the table. So that's a possibility. If people want to do the laws of Lashon Hara, we could take on that as a topic. Any other suggestions?
But by the way, I'm fine. It makes perfect sense. I would love to talk about some of the minor prophets too. So
Here's
really
an
be cool.
interesting thing. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll tell you the green light, I'll tell you the red light. We talked about topics that are maybe more specifically geared for B'nai Noach, and I know you corrected me on that. You didn't say specifically, but I'm always trying to find things that are applicable to all of my audience. But I have already a dedicated series on the Noachide laws that I want to continue, and I don't want to make everything on this channel specifically geared for Noachides because I want to reach Jews also. But a thought I did have, and this is what Jacob actually wanted me to do once upon a time, is whereas my series on the Noachide laws is going through the book, The Divine Code, by Rabbi Moshe Weiner, who really kind of he digests all the classical material into a relatively concise but certainly very organized code of law for the Noachide laws. It's like the Shulchan Aruch for Noachides, he calls it. Jacob wanted me to go back to the source material, the way that I described before, going through the development of the law from the scripture to the contemporary halacha, which is what rabbinical students will study. You go through that source material to get the background and all these areas of laws, learn the foundation so you could apply it to contemporary situations, understanding the underpinnings of the concepts and whatnot. To do that with the Noahide laws, go back to the original texts, look at what's in the written text, what's in the oral tradition, and how it's digested through the ages, and how we would get, in theory, a contemporary application of it. And that's something that would be very fascinating for me to do. Like, I would love to do something like that, but again, I'm that's the green light. The red light is that I'm a little concerned about the Noahide topic overwhelming my channel. So because I have a series for Noahides, I want to keep that over there and have the weekly live series, the Sunday night series. And I don't know if it's going to stay on Sunday night either. We might move to a different night of the week. I don't know, but to have this weekly series be something that is more universal, I think. So in other words, not specifically Noahide, but also maybe not specifically off limits to Noahide. So for example, maybe we won't study areas of the Talmud or sections of the Talmud that are irrelevant for Noahides, which would be problematic for them to study. So Tanakh is within limits, within bounds, and ethical texts are within bounds, and legal texts that relate to the Noahide laws or to laws that Noahides are permitted to adopt or encouraged to adopt, like we said, like the laws of forbidden speech, etc. Okay, John Volkov, my friend John. Glad to have you here. He says, Esther would be an interesting topic. Seems like it would apply to a broader audience. Seemingly Hashem's hand was not there, but surely it was. That's a great suggestion. Esther is 10 chapters. It's also a relatively short book. And it's read every year by Jews on Purim, and it's very fascinating to study. And so once we get to Esther, we could talk about what's called the five. Again, I think Jews are familiar with this. I don't know that non-Jews are familiar with this. The Jews have the concept of what's called the five Megillot. Now, Megillah in Hebrew is a scroll. So we have what's called the five Megillot. If I asked a non-Jew, what are the five Megillot? What are the five scrolls? I don't think they would know. Am I right or am I wrong? Hey, you non-Jews out there, do you know what the five Megillot are?
No.
I'll give you a hint. There, 5 of the books of the Tanakh are identified by Jews as the 5 Megillot, the 5 scrolls. Anybody know? No Jews allowed to answer right now.
Is it the Torah?
No, the Torah is
No.
the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 fifths, really. Chamisha Chumshei Torah means the 5 fifths of the Torah, which is also called the Pentateuch in Greek, and the 5 books of Moses in English. It's not the 5 scrolls. Just like the 5 towns are not the 5 boroughs. And only New Yorkers know what I'm talking about now. I don't think non-New Yorkers know what the 5 boroughs are. But if I talk about the 5 towns, a New Yorker knows that I'm not talking about the 5 boroughs. But a non-New Yorker might not know that. Because New York has 5 boroughs and 5 towns. So the Tanakh has 5 books of Moses and it has 5 scrolls. So Liz is shrugging. So the 5 scrolls are the Chamesh Megillot are, you ready? Right. So John says 5 scrolls are 5 books. Yeah, they are 5, but they're 5 separate books. But these are books that we identify as scrolls. So Margot Noahide has identified 2 of them and missed on a 3rd one. Esther is one of them, the scroll of Esther. In Hebrew, it's not called Sefer Esther. Sefer means book in Hebrew. So all the books of the Tanakh are basically called Sefer this, Sefer that. Sefer Yeshayahu, the book of Isaiah. Sefer Yirmiyahu, the book of Jeremiah. Sefer Daniel, the book of Daniel, etc. The book of Proverbs, the book of Psalms. But we get to Esther, we don't say the book of Esther. I know non-Jews say the book of Esther. We say Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther. And Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, is known as Megillat Shir HaShirim, the scroll of the Song of Songs, not the book of the Song of Songs. The other, Job is not one of them. Job is the book of Job, Sefer Eov. The other three scrolls are the book of Ruth, is called the Scroll of Ruth, Megillat Ruth. The scroll of Ecclesiastes, Megillat Kohelet, and the scroll of Lamentations, Megillat Eicha. Okay, these 5 scrolls are, so John got Lamentations. These 5 scrolls are read publicly on 5 Jewish holidays. Okay, 5 Jewish holidays. Now, I grant you, I accept the criticism that it's only according to some traditions. I am saying this according to the Ashkenazic tradition. The Sephardim will yell at me and say, we don't read these on the same days that you do in our tradition. So let's talk about where we agree and where we don't agree. Every single Jewish community, every single one, and I mean Jewish communities that are loyal to tradition. Doesn't matter if it's Sephardic, Ashkenaz, Yemenite, whateverite, okay? They will read on Purim, the holiday of Purim, the scroll of Esther. Twice, once at night and once during the day. The night comes before the day in Jewish calendar days. The sun sets, it's the beginning of the next day. Purim begins at night. All Jewish holidays begin at night, and they proceed through the next day till nightfall the next day. And they will read on the evening of the 9th day of Av, Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which is a major fast. They will read the scroll of Lamentations publicly. This will be read publicly. Now, according to Ashkenazic tradition, on the festival of Passover, we will read the scroll of Song of Songs. Sephardic Jews have the tradition to read it privately, not publicly, but privately every Friday before the Sabbath. Okay, that's a custom by them. But Ashkenazim read it publicly on the festival of Passover. We read the scroll of Ruth, the book of Ruth, on the festival of Shavuot or Pentecost for you Gentiles. And on the festival of Sukkot or Tabernacles or Booths, we read the scroll of Ecclesiastes. Okay, so these 5. So we do read those 5 books publicly, at least in the Ashkenazic tradition. We read all 5. The Sephardim will read 2 of them publicly. They're relatively short books. Esther is 10 chapters. Lamentations is 4 chapters. Ecclesiastes is 12 chapters. Ruth is 4 chapters. Song of Songs, we did it already. Done. 8 chapters. So that could be another kind of like series of short books of the Tanakh we could do, that we could feel like we did like a whole series, and we've already done a good chunk of it, and could kind of feel good about that. So that's another possibility of short books of Tanakh to study. What's the significance of identifying them as scrolls? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why these are called Megillot, whereas others aren't. For Esther, it's much more profound, because Esther has to specifically be read from a scroll. And the difference between a scroll of Esther and, let's say, a scroll of the Torah, the scroll of the Torah is mounted on 2 posts, which are rolled together. The scroll of Esther is like a single roll. It's a single roll. And not only that, the word Megillah in Hebrew means legalot. The verb in Hebrew, legalot, means to reveal. So while Megillah has to do with rolling something up, so a scroll is a Megillah because it's rolled up, but it's also unraveled. It's sort of revealed. It's unraveled and opened up. Okay. Now, the word Esther in Hebrew, which is her name, is from the Hebrew root, which means hidden. Seter in Hebrew means hidden thing or a secret. So Megillat Esther, which means the scroll of Esther, literally means revealing the hidden. Megillah, revealing, Esther, the hidden. And the whole idea of Esther, as you yourself pointed out, is that God's name is hidden in the book. There's no overt reference to God in the entire book. And God's hand is hidden in the book because all the events in the book seem to happen coincidentally or naturally. And yet the circumstances of nature and coincidence conspire to save the Jews miraculously. So we see the hand of God in nature. We reveal the hidden through the face of nature, the mask. And that's the custom of wearing costumes, that we wear a mask, but we acknowledge that the mask is not the true identity. The true identity is what's behind the mask. We see a physical world, but we identify that God is really in control behind the mask of nature. So in Megillat Esther, there's a very deep significance to being called a Megillah. It's a revelation of the hidden. And in fact, the custom, not a requirement, but the custom when reading the scroll of Esther is, rather than like when we read the Torah, it's rolled up on these posts and we just unravel it to the place we're reading. And then as we go through the scroll, we roll it to the spot, but it's always rolled up. The scroll of Esther is totally unraveled when we read it. We take the whole scroll and we totally open it. We open the whole scroll. It could go across the entire room. And with the reader, what he does is he just folds the scroll over itself onto the platform, the bima, where it's read from. He unravels the entire scroll and just kind of folds the folds of the scroll underneath itself. And you have this big pile of scroll that's totally open. The whole book is completely open. All the hidden things are revealed when we read the book of Esther. And part of that is understanding that you don't even understand the events of the book that happen in the beginning until you get to the end. When you get to the end, you realize, aha, how did we get to this moment? Because all these seemingly otherwise coincidental and unconnected events were all being orchestrated to lead up to this crescendo over here. So to understand the beginning, you have to have the end open in front of you as well. So we open the entire thing. And there's a halacha that you can't read the book of Esther out of order. Now, that seems rather obvious, but there's a specific halacha that if you were to read it starting in the middle of the book and you get to the end, and then you go back to the beginning and read it from the beginning to the point you started at, you would not fulfill the commandment to read the book of Esther on Purim. It has to be read in sequence so you can see the unfolding of events according to God's design. So the only thing I can answer you specifically regarding the book of Esther, why it's called a Megillah, a scroll, for that reason, why the other ones take that unique name, aside from the fact that they're written on scrolls, but you could make the point. But they're all written on scrolls. The Torah is written on a scroll. The books of the prophets are written on scrolls. Yeah, it's true. We also print them in the book, but in the beginning, they were all scrolls. Why those specifically called scrolls? I'm not sure. It's a good question. I have to get back to you on that. Janice Brandon, Pirkei Avot and Musar. Oh, you're saying that's your vote of what you want to learn? Fisherman's Corner gifted 20 Rabbi Rafi Mollot memberships. Thank you for that beautiful gift. Anyone who joins the live stream who's not yet a member will very likely land themselves a free membership. So tell your friends to join the stream. Also, yeah, on that note, spread the word. If you know people that you think would enjoy and benefit from these classes, invite them and send them the links, send them the recordings, send them the videos, forward them my emails, let them join the live stream. We want to spread Torah over here. So don't be shy. Be an evangelist a little bit and get the word out if you feel that what this channel has to offer would be valuable to people you know. John comments, interesting, the scroll being fully opened are a contrast of Hashem being hidden in the actual text. Right, there's all these ironic contradictions between the field on Purim. Frank 973, I read Esther and I see what happens when a few Jews will hold fast to Torah, they could save the whole nation. Absolutely. It's a beautiful comment. And I made similar remarks on Shabbos. I was asked on the fly to speak. I was in a synagogue in the neighborhood, and the rabbi walked over to me during one part of the Shabbos goings on at Shalosh Shudis, if you know what that is. And he said, would you like to share a few words? So I happened to share a few words along the lines of what Frank 973 just said. I didn't reference the Book of Esther, but I made a similar point. Fisherman's Corner says, "Will do, thank you." I assume that means you're gonna evangelize for the channel. We just wanna spread Torah over here, and I appreciate the memberships because it helps me keep the lights on. You know, if a few dollars come my way every month, it honestly, it helps me to be able to justify the time that I am investing in this channel. Oh, Linda Hill looks like she got a gift membership. Welcome to the membership. Okay, we're just about at the end of the hour now, so I think we got some options on the table. I like the idea of the 5 Megillot. We have Musar as an option. Maybe if someone specifically wants to study one of the Musar books, again, they could be pretty large. They could be pretty large. What do you call it? Mesilat Yesharim, if I'm not mistaken, which I referenced before, the Path of the Just, is 20 chapters. 20 chapters. Now, it's not necessarily like a chapter of Tanakh where it's like verse after verse. You know, maybe it's something that could be studied more quickly. That's possible. Another one of my favorites that I always recommend, The Duties of the Heart, Chavod HaLevavot, is a very big book. It's a very worthwhile study, but I feel for this venue, the channel should be something chunked down and easy to digest. As it is, I think our Yonah series took us, I don't know how long it took us, about a year, and the Shir Hashirim took us about 2.5 years. I don't remember. I moved in the middle and we stopped for a few months, but it took us, and the Tefillah series, the prayer series, I think also was about 2 years going through the Shemona Esrei. So I want to do something that is small and attainable in a relative short amount of time. Even doing 2-year series, it's a big chunk of people's lives to invest. So I want to stay small because I don't want to bite off more than we can chew. Channel. Yeah, Golden Gun says Ovadia is so small you could get through that fast and hopefully all be hooked. Right. I mean, in theory, we could do Ovadia, you could bang it out maybe in even one session. In other words, you don't have to go necessarily verse by verse. I would like to. I want to actually read the text, but we don't have to add so much commentary that it needs to move very slowly. We could do a chunk of the text at a time and talk about it in a broad sense and move quickly. You know, I have to see what goes into my prep and how capable I am of not talking too much. But that's some ideas. So I have written down over here Pirkei Avos as a possibility with the commentary of Rabbeinu Yonah. That's the Ethics of the Fathers. We have maybe a series on the 12 prophets. We have maybe a series on specific philosophical topics within Judaism, and people could send me the suggestions, and each week could be a different topic. We have maybe a series on the laws of Lashon Hara. We have the 5 Megillot as a Tanakh study possibility, the 5 so-called scrolls. What do we say they are? Song of Songs. We did it already. So we would move on to Ruth. Someone suggested Esther specifically. No problem starting with Esther. It's a very exciting story. Esther, Ruth, Ecclesiastes, and Lamentations, or a book of Musar, one of the ethical books. These are some of the different possibilities. I'm personally most excited by the idea of learning Tanakh. So I don't want to let my personal feelings get too much in the way of what you want to learn. So let's think about what was suggested tonight. Hopefully, with the notes that I took, we'll send out some type of a survey via email, WhatsApp, on the YouTube on my YouTube posts and maybe on Facebook, and I'll collect the responses, and we might have a clear winner. We might not have a clear winner, and in the end, that might override everybody and say I'm just going to do what I want. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you everybody for joining me tonight and having this discussion. And again, the doors aren't closed for more suggestions. If you want to send me some some more suggestions, email me, rabbi@rabbirafimollot.com. Reach out to me on Facebook. Reach out to me on WhatsApp if you want to be part of the WhatsApp group. Email me, rabbi@rabbirafimollot.com. I can be reached in a number of ways, so keep the suggestions coming in, and I hope soon, maybe as soon as next week, we'll be ready to start a new series. Maybe we'll take another week to think about it and discuss it and prepare and send out notifications and whatever promotional material and start the week after. We'll go with the flow. I'm a very go with the flow guy, which is that is kind of a nice way of saying I'm very disorganized. Okay, so thanks for tuning in. Be in touch, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. John says,
Rabbi.
Lech l'shalom. Thank you. You too. Okay, have a good night, Tim, Cliff, Sandy, everyone in the YouTube land. B'nai Noach, Hearts for Hashem, Dr. D to you, John. Thank you, Golden Gun, Linda, Fisherman's Corner, Frank, Janice, Margot, Liz, Yehudi Yisrael. Anyone? I hope I didn't miss anybody. Thank you all for joining and being part of our community. And, like I said, share with your friends. Bring a friend next time. Come again and bring a friend. Okay.
Take care.
Have a good night.